Hey everybody, this is TJR.
This is Superfan.
If this is your first time here, welcome to the channel. If not, welcome back. And 6 years ago, the lawsuit between, or I should say, the lawsuit against Ed Sheeran for his song Thinking Out Loud was announced. And I made a video back then entitled Ed Sheeran versus Marvin Gaye, Let's Get It On versus Thinking Out Loud. And finally, 6 years later, it finally went to trial. The verdict was announced today. Ed Sheeran was found not guilty of copyright infringement.
Yay.
Which I'm glad happened. And if you saw my original video, I expressed it back then too. I thought I'd take a moment here just to kind of discuss my thoughts on the verdict and look back on the whole thing. And I even put the same shirt on that I wore 6 years ago just for the occasion. Actually, no, I'm kidding. This is actually a different shirt, but it looks very similar. I thought it would be funny to put it on. Somebody would probably say, oh gosh, he's still wearing the same shirt. Anyways, though.
I bought this shirt for you in remembrance.
You bought both for me, actually. You bought both of them for me, which I really appreciate it.
Well, because I have good taste.
You do. Thank you. Well, not in men, but otherwise you have good taste. But anyways, though.
Yeah, that's to be debated.
But let's talk about this here. When Ed Sheeran spoke to the press after the ruling, he said that, of course, he was glad, but he basically stated, you know, that this copyright lawsuit was frivolous because it was attacking the basic building blocks of music. And he's right. These songs had very little in common with each other. Style, they were the same style, yes, but you can't copyright a style. There is, at a certain point, they use the same chord progression, but lots of songs use the same chord progression. And I think one of the dangerous things that happens whenever these types of lawsuits are announced is somebody on YouTube will take the two tracks, they will adjust the speed of them so they match up better and sound closer to each other, and just play them over each other. And in the attempt to make them sound as alike as possible. What they sometimes fail to do, in this case too, with this track, is that the melody lines are completely different. The lyrics are completely different. And traditionally speaking, when it comes to music and when it comes to songs and it comes to copyright, what has traditionally been copyrightable is the melody and the lyrics. We set a dangerous precedent a while back with the Robin Thicke versus the Marvin Gaye estate trial regarding the two songs Blurred Lines and Gotta Give It Up. These songs did not have the same lyrics. They did not have the same melodies. They didn't even use the same chord progressions. They were just a similar vibe. And when YouTubers, you know, put the two tracks on top of each other and played them on the internet, people just thought, oh, they're the same song. They're not. Lots of songs sound the same because they use the same chord progressions and they're stylistically similar. Tons of rock and roll songs from the 1950s use the same chord progressions and are played in a similar style, but what sets them apart is the melody and the lyrics. The thing, though, with music copyright is that there's never been a clear set of rules. That's why I've always said traditionally speaking. The reason for this is because there should be room for exceptions. And that's because music is filled with variations. However, as more of these ridiculous, baseless copyright lawsuits are being brought forth, I'm kind of starting to side more and more with the idea that maybe we should have a more hard and fast rule where it is just strictly lyrics and melody. I don't know. It's a real big double-edged sword.
Yeah, you make that rule, it's going to come back to bite you.
You're probably right. I think the reason, though, why we are seeing more and more of these types of lawsuits, why we have seen them over the last decade or so is because, at least here in the United States, I feel like we are a country of musical illiterates because we took music education out of public schools. Whereas I think in other European countries where they didn't abandon music education, you'll see less of that. And that's because the populace is just musically better educated. And one of the problems when these go to trial is that then you've got a jury that is musically uneducated and that doesn't understand that there are elements of music that are building blocks. In the same way that letters of the alphabet or sentence structures are building blocks to writing stories, chord progressions are basic building blocks for writing songs. I know that I used to sometimes play the Bo Diddley song, Who Do You Love? Which most people are familiar with the classic rock cover of it by George Thorogood. And I would play that song and I would jump into Desire by U2. I'd do it seamlessly. That's because they are stylistically very similar, but they're not the same songs. Their lyrics and melodies are completely different. But they both use a very similar tempo, beat, rhythmic structure, and all of which is style, it's vibe, it's groove. It's the building blocks of music. It's not lyrics and melody.
It doesn't make them the same song.
No. When I was younger, I was not as musically well traveled. And the music that I knew was limited compared to what I know now, especially after I started playing gigs 4 or 5 nights a week, started learning tons and tons of cover songs from different eras of popular music. The more cover songs I actually played, the more I began to recognize the similarities in songs and began to realize, we all build off of each other. We all build off of what came before. Nothing is created in a vacuum. And there are only so many notes. There are only so many ways you can combine those notes. It becomes impossible after all this time, after so many decades of popular music, it becomes impossible to write anything and not have some portion of what you've created have a similarity to something that came before. And I think we have to start realizing that more and more. But I think the main thing is I wish we really need to have a more musically educated populace in this country, I think. I think that would make a big difference. Also, I think these days, so much of popular music is, how shall I say it, less creative than what we grew up with. And I hate to sound like an old man yelling at the cloud, but I do believe that a lot of what charts anyways is a lot less creative than what we grew up with in the 60s, 70s, the 80s. I think that when every single song is using similar 1-4-5 chord progressions, when so many of them are, when they're using the same programming, the same computer DAW systems, when they're using the same samples, beats per minute, that it becomes even harder to write something that doesn't sound like what came before. I do think that musicians, songwriters, music artists need to strive to always say, how can I not sound like everybody else? I do believe that. I think that's what drove the music of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and even some of the 90s. It wasn't until I think we started making music more on computers than on instruments that began to change. And I have nothing against making music on computers. I think they can be a great thing. But I think more and more we have to start, every music artist has to start thinking, how can I sound different from everybody else? Where can I stretch and take things where no one else has taken it before? But it's impossible to create in a vacuum. And it's impossible to not be influenced by what came before. And as the history of popular music gets bigger and bigger, it just becomes next to impossible to not in some way create something, whether you did it intentionally or not, that doesn't sound like something that came before it. And as I've gotten older, as I've gotten more musically journeyed, more experienced in, just examining other songs, learning how to play them, I find myself saying that the majority of copyright infringement lawsuits are pointless. And anyways, though, I'm really glad that Ed Sheeran won this. I'm glad he was found not guilty. The blurred lines, gotta give it up case really pushed the needle this way towards being able to copyright the building blocks of music: groove, vibe, style, versus lyrics and melody. And thankfully, this case pushed it more this way. Because we don't have a set of rules, everything is based on what's come before. And hopefully, the Let's Get It On, I should say, the Gotta Give It Up versus Blurred Lines case will be remembered as a one-off anomaly.
Yeah, you can only hope.
Yeah.
It's the musician's job to be creative.
At the end of the day, yeah, I think, but again, we've got music being created more with computers now, more with software, and less by actual musicians. At least what charts on the radio, what charts at this point.
Well, I don't think that's true in this case.
Well, no, not in this case. Ed Sheeran is a musician.
Yeah.
But I think it's, like I said, I think it's harder to not sound like everybody else when everybody's using the same recording software, the same samples, the same beats per minute. And it becomes harder.
That's what's their job, is to make it stand out.
Exactly. Even if that's what you're doing, you have to keep thinking, how can I make what I do stand out from what everybody else is doing right now? And that's what pushes the boundaries, pushes the envelopes, And
I think that
how can I get away from using the same chord progressions as everybody else?
Yeah, as an artist, that's your job.
That's your job, yeah. I agree.
And that will help you avoid,
Yes, the more you do that, the more you're going to avoid that. Yes, absolutely. But anyways, though, so just some thoughts about that. Hope this didn't come off as too rambling. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Also, I do want to say something here. That video I made 6 years ago, I made a really big error. I said that lawsuit was the Marvin Gaye estate versus Ed Sheeran. I think it's because of the Robin Thicke Blurred Lines case that I made that mistake. Around the same time, I got it confused. It was actually, the Marvin Gaye estate had nothing to do with that lawsuit with Ed Sheeran. It was the family of
Ed Townsend.
Ed Townsend, thank you, who was songwriting partner with Marvin Gaye on that track. And so, yeah, I put a disclaimer on that video I made 6 years ago, but I want to just take a moment here to correct that here as well. But at any rate, though, let me know your thoughts on all of this. As always, if you like these videos, be sure to hit like, hit subscribe, hit the bell notification icon so you never miss a video. I want to say thank you now to the patron supporters.
You're fierce and mighty.
Patron supporters do receive exclusive weekly videos not available on this channel. And if you can't be a patron supporter, I understand. Just click like, share these videos with anyone you think might be interested. But I do want to thank everybody who discovered that 6-year-old video. It got so many more views as a result, and a lot more comments. I really appreciate all of that. It kind of reminds me, that I haven't really done too much of those song examination videos in quite a while. Not sure why I fell away from it. I think I just maybe got a little tired of it, but maybe I'll come back to it. Anyways, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate that you come by and just spend a little time. And we'll see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.